Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm sitting in today with the college counselor, Tom Palmieri. Tom, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
You're very welcome. So, first of all, we want to get started off by sort of giving you an introduction to everybody here on the campus. Now, I'm sure that in the time that you've been here thus far, you've managed to meet most everybody, but this is the first time we've ever had the chance to have you on the podcast. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe what your background is and how you ended up calling Central Penn home as a career.
Sure. So I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally. I've only been in this area for about 7 years, although it's weird as time progresses. I don't think I can say only after 7 years necessarily anymore. My background in my kind of journey in counseling is like a little bit kind of wonky in some ways. When I was in college, I very much thought I would be going into like directly student affairs, admissions, residence life. Some things kind of changed for me, and I wound up doing a lot of work with kind of physical health and wellness. I got involved in that because I had like some health issues like my senior year of college and gained a lot of weight and found myself like really interested in that area. So I've actually been working in that particular corner of the world for 10 years. January will be 10 years. I moved down here in 2011 to start my master's. I did that at Shippensburg University.
I'm also a Shippensburg grad, so that's really cool. Yeah, I got my master's degree there, and I finished up there in 2009.
Yeah, it was a really interesting kind of time in my life, just making the change of kind of doing the urban city New York thing. And then that first like few months in Shippensburg and like
Culture shock in a big way. I remember the first night I was down here when I lived in Brooklyn. My family always lived around the corner from a fire station. So I remember the first night that I was down here and it was quiet and I almost like didn't know what to do with myself. I can imagine.
Yeah. So been here for 7 years, and in the time I was at Ship, did a lot of kind of different experiences, working with the college population, working with students with different learning disabilities, working with students that were on probation, doing a lot of kind of partnerships with other areas at different schools. I worked at Wilson College in their counseling center for a time, and then I found myself doing a lot of work in what's called BHRS services, so working with kids with autism and their families. So I was a therapist that actually went into people's homes with kids that were having significant behavioral challenges. I mean, I could tell you some stories about like some pretty scary experiences that I had.
Well, I'm not sure if you know this. I actually have a son who's on the autism spectrum.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he is 18 years old, and he is able to go till he's 21.
Yeah.
So he is in the life skills program, and he actually has a job, which is wonderful.
That's beautiful.
Only 1 day a week, but hopefully as he gets a little older and once he finishes up with his studies, hopefully he'll be able to work there a little bit longer. So I certainly can speak to you on that respect. We're very, very lucky that the behaviors aren't an issue with him.
Yeah.
Just like any kid, he has some behaviors occasionally, but for the most part, he's the most loving kid that you'll ever meet, and we're very, very lucky because we are very active in the local autism community.
Oh, wow.
As far as outreach and certain groups that we've been a part of, and we are extremely lucky as far as the behaviors go from his respect, because we are friends with many families that struggle with behavioral issues from their children. So I give you a lot of credit for doing that, because that's definitely not something that there's a lot of help out there for. And that's what's really frustrating to us, because we're getting to the point where yes, he can still go till he's 21, but what then?
Yeah.
And it's upsetting, because we're thinking, okay, now the clock is ticking. So
yeah, and it's a really valid question that really like impacts a lot of families. I mean, I don't want to go too off on the tangent about like what that looks like, but a lot of times like help isn't always available in the way that people think it is and how people talk about it that it is. And so those experiences can be really impactful for parents and families in lots of different ways. And so a lot of that work that I was doing in kind of the community was really about building a lot of those partnerships and just kind of getting everybody to the table to talk about what kind of treatment are we not giving just this person for their behaviors, but how are we really looking out for that whole person? And that's really one of the things that drew me back into wanting to get back into the college environment, of being able to kind of help people and do that. But yeah, so that's really cool to hear that, like, this is something that, like, is so meaningful for you.
Absolutely, without a question. So let's get back to how you got here to Central Penn. How did it come about that you found the position? You know, what was it about Central Penn that stuck out to you that made you want to spend your career here?
Yeah, so a friend of mine is actually the director of counseling at a college in Chambersburg, Wilson College. So she and I interned there together, good friend, and I got a text message one day like, hey, there's a position that's going to be opening. And at the time, I was doing a lot of drug and alcohol work in Franklin County. So I was co-directing what's called an IOP program, an intensive outpatient program. So for people that have chronic substance abuse problems. And you know, there was some stuff like in my work environment. I loved my clients. I loved the work I was doing. Didn't really much care for some of the organizational stuff that was happening. So I kind of looked into the position and I kind of felt like this could be a good fit for me. I liked the idea of going to a smaller school, but also a school that had like different sets of populations, so different types of work, different opportunities. The position really allows me to kind of do what I want as far as like making it my own. So, and that's not like a real opportunity that you always have available to you in mental health, because usually they very much want it done in a specific sort of way. So you just have to follow the policy. So the ability to kind of craft this and tailor make it was something that really kind of drew me in. And then flash forward, I started here in July and that's where I'm at.
So it's only been just a few months that you've been here, but you've already made a huge impact on our campus. And that's what I'm hoping to talk about for sort of the rest of the time here. And first of all, we're glad that you're here. You really have one of the things that kind of, you know, one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on the show was because basically like the first day you were here, I received an email, and I'm sure that it went to many others other than just simply me, but that basically introduced yourself. You were very clear about what you wanted to do and what your goals were, which I thought was really cool because sometimes, you know, when people come in, new position, they don't really know how they want to hit the ground, and you certainly hit the ground running. You said from day one, here's what I'm able to do, here's what I want to do, and you were able to have and get off on the right foot with a lot of the faculty and staff here, and I think that that's really been helpful to your very quick progress here and integrating yourself in your office with what's been going on here on campus.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing that. And I don't know, I was kind of raised and kind of educated in the way that almost like better to ask forgiveness than to ask permission. So I kind of, when I got here, I was like, I am only going to be effective if people know I'm here, if people know who I am, and if people feel comfortable kind of talking about stuff. And that piece of like just putting a face and a name to like a service and a provider like is really important. It's all word of mouth. So especially at a college campus, like students talk, faculty talk, staff talk. So I kind of got here with the mindset of like, I'm going to give people something to talk about.
Well, and something that's interesting too, and part of the reason I work very closely with career services in my classes, and certainly I want to continue working very closely with you as well in your office. And one of the reasons that, you know, Steve Hassing, your career services director, he always asked me, you know, what was it about our office that made you really, really actively want to be, you know, have us in the room? And I said, you know, when I was back in college, I have no issues telling, you know, everybody this. I really struggled finding work, not only when I got out of with my undergrad, but from grad school as well. Even when I finished grad school, I had trouble finding my first position, and the biggest reason why was because I didn't take advantage of career services. But it wasn't. Again, I take full responsibility, and I have no issue saying that, but I don't think that the school did a good enough job, the schools that I went to. Not that I have any issues. I had great experiences at the schools I went to. I just never got to meet anybody from career services in any of my classes. Yeah. None of the instructors made it a priority to bring them into class, and I'm not going to do that because I think, you know, I did myself a disservice.
Yeah.
But the fact that, yes, we know it exists, but yet not one of my professors ever said, hey, we're going to have someone from career services come in, or I'm going to make you go to career services. And that's part of the reason that I want them to be a part of what I do, because it's sometimes the professor that's sort of that intermediary between some of the services that we have and the students that we have, as we can try to bring those together. And I kind of look at the same with you. For example, you came into my CPC Foundations class in the summer term, and to be honest, and it was just, we made the jars, and the kids loved it. And it was such a great way to introduce yourself to some of our new students. And I thought it was just a really unique, it was a Friday afternoon, low stakes, but it was still very important. You had a very, very important message, but you also made yourself very approachable. And I think that opportunity for us to get in and bring people such as yourself into the classroom is a great way to introduce the students to you and what services you offer.
For a lot of folk, like if we talk about like counseling and mental health, the picture that people have in their heads is not a good picture. It's that person that, did something horrible or hurt somebody or hurt themselves or committed some sort of crime or created some sort of scene. And the fact of the matter is that mental health, that's just like one small part of it. It's includes all the other things that we do to take care of the different parts of ourselves, spiritually, emotionally, and physically too. And if the conversation is only about that one particular section on the spectrum, you really run the risk of kind of leaving a lot of other things and a lot of other people off the table. In student services, we really talk about how we don't want people to feel like they only come to us in a crisis, because then we're not really doing what needs done. So yeah, any opportunity that I have to kind of get in the mix of it, and to help faculty, staff, students, I'm all about it.
Well, and what's even interesting here too, Tom, is the fact that we do have an accelerated schedule. So it's not that it's any more or less difficult, but sometimes a lot of maybe issues that college students might have is just workload. So if you're working a full-time job, which I mean certainly many of our students are working at least a part-time job, and then you have a full-time class schedule in which that we finish in a month sooner than other schools around the area. I mean, that often, for me, when I've spoken to students about just if they've ever come and just wanted to chat with me, that's often what it is that it's just there's a lot of pressure put on them, not only to work but also to keep their grades up. Do you find that our particular school with our accelerated schedule does maybe show you some more of those issues?
Oh yeah, I think the schedule even affects me. Right. And it's only because our mindset our brain can only handle so much at one time. And so even right now, as we're talking about this is week 5. For some people, this is midterm weeks. For some people, it's next week. Registration was just last week. And then by the time they get their midterm grades back, they're already thinking about finals are next week. So, and then it's sort of everything resets again. And it definitely has an impact that you go through that in 11 weeks, and then in 2 weeks after that, you press the reset button. So most colleges that run on a semester schedule, those students only have to deal with that process twice a year. So we totally put an increased set of demands on our students. And I also think that just what it is to be a college student now, I don't think it means the same thing as it did 10, 15 years ago, when you or I were going through that process. In getting to know a lot of the students here, a lot of our students do work. A lot of our students are supporting not only themselves, but they're supporting other people too. And they work hard, and that takes a toll. And they might not be getting the same sort of support that, a lot of their peers that go to different institutions that have different makeups, that have different setups do. And so one of the things that I've really been kind of focusing on since I got here over the summer was the idea that I'm only going to be able to do so many things because I'm an office of one. So my first priority has really been to try not to be an office of one anymore. So starting next term, I'm going to be having an intern, and my goal is by next fall to kind of elevate that program to the place of where I can have 2 interns in addition to myself at any given point in time. And I'm hoping to get to the point of being able to bring even a part-time counselor who's already have a master's degree kind of into the mix, but that's a little bit of a longer term goal.
Well, of course, and that's the thing is we never get anything done unless we have lofty goals, and I think that's fantastic. So so one of the things that we talked about this in our pre-show meeting is that you're hoping that one of these interns can come in and not only help you with some of the day-to-day things, but also to develop some more programming.
Yes.
You have done a wonderful job in creating and delivering some programming, and I think that this would be really cool because that'll help kind of lighten the load for you in terms of the programming that is offered. Because that's one thing, basically from the very beginning, you have been very adamant about doing several different types of programs. Can you talk about some of the programs that you've done since you've gotten here?
Sure. I mean, so the idea of diversity and social justice has always been like a really big passion of mine, just because our lived experiences in terms of our own diversity like impact us so much. We know that gender matters. We know that geography matters in terms of where a student like even is from. We know that religion matters. We know that culture matters. We know that race matters. We know that sexual orientation matters, and we know that experiences, both painful ones and successful ones, really matter. So one of the types of programming that I really look at is programs that create opportunities for people to have conversations about those things and to make it more mainstream. In the next couple of days, and so this will air by the time this program is passed, we're having the victim advocate for the Commonwealth, Jennifer Storm, on campus to give a talk and answer questions with students. Like, that's a big deal. She works with the whole state and all sorts of victims' rights related issues. I mean, most recently, she was making the rounds on all the radio shows and talk shows with regards to the sex abuse scandals that were breaking out of the Catholic Diocese in Philadelphia. So we have a number of people on campus that have experiences with violence. A lot of times people think that is something that's really far away, but no, it's happening in our own backyards. We have a lot of students that have been impacted in all sorts of different ways by the opioid epidemic. Just even in terms of the geography of where the school is located, this is something that really is affecting kind of our everyday and the lives of our students. But if no one's talking about it, and if people aren't having those conversations, it decreases the probability that someone is going to get maybe some of the support they need, or feel comfortable even like saying, hey, I need some support with this. So creating that dialogue is super important. And so one of the hopes of having an intern is just to be able to have like another human to help facilitate that process. But the other part of it is that an office like mine, it doesn't benefit from just like a single person's perspective, because there's more than one person at this college. So when I was doing the hiring search and getting applications from people, I was really paying attention to people that have differences in terms of like theoretical orientations from myself, different types of backgrounds, because ultimately like our students are really going to benefit from any sort of diversity in like an office like mine, or really any office on campus.
Well, speaking about some of the things that you've been working on since you got here, you were very instrumental in the Honors 400 class. Now, we had Dr. Whaler and Dr. Vicklis on to talk about it, and we actually had some of the students on from that class as well. Something that was very unique that we've done, and it's only been done a handful of times. But can you talk to us about how your office played a role in this, and then maybe what some of the outcomes were by the end of the term with the Honors 400 class?
Yeah, so that was a really cool experience. Both groups of students reached out to me independently. Like, I later found out that they both didn't realize the other group was doing anything mental health related, which I thought was adorable. So yeah, for the group that Dr. Vicklis was supervising and overseeing, they elected to do a internal assessment about what counseling services look like at the college. So when I started in July, the position had been vacant, I think, since the previous March. Now, there were therapists that were contracted by the school that were working like per diem, so like on an as-needed basis. I later found out that like a lot of students didn't even know that was happening. They did a lot of work in terms of looking at what the process and the experience of counseling services at Central Penn was. And the outcomes and the things that they even reported to me were like, A little bit disheartening, just in terms of like a lot of them as upper level students, as leaders in different organizations on campus, saying that they didn't feel like this was a resource that was available to them in the way that it was promised. That like really struck a chord with me. So I worked with those students on kind of explaining logistically how laws like FERPA and laws like HIPAA allow and don't allow for counseling services office to do different things, talk with them about kind of budget implications of this. And long story short, what came out of it was a really succinct proposal about how to integrate some different aspects into the office. So that was the launching pad for student services actually developing like a whole new section on Blackboard. So starting at the beginning of this term, there is a whole student resources section that wasn't there. So I am on there, advising is on there. The Learning Center had previously been the only student services office on the My Central Penn web tabs, but now they have a page on there as well. Megan Peterson, who's the Director of Equity, has information about Title IX services and Americans with Disability Act services on there. And that all really came as a result of those 5 students kind of taking initiative. I was also able to make some changes into the referral process. So now on like the Counseling Services Blackboard tab, there is a link that people can click to start the scheduling process. So it's a little bit more like user friendly. There's also a link on there that people can submit if they have concerns for another classmate and they want me to do some sort of an outreach on it. There are resources for a variety of different issues, like so free 24/7 resources that people can access, what to do there's some crisis resource on there too, and that's even for students that maybe necessarily don't live on campus because we know the vast majority of our students don't. So I have some local crisis resources for different counties in Pennsylvania available there. So, and that really came from those students. Oh, and the big thing that they wanted was talking about having some sort of online assessment. And so I actually found out that that had been a project that had been started by Counseling Services like back in 2014, but it kind of just like fallen by the wayside. So I was able to sort of reactivate the work that a previous director had put in, and that's also been integrated into the Blackboard page as well. So I was really happy by the end of all of it. I wasn't able to necessarily do everything because, money and budget, but I was able to kind of create and use their feedback in some really tangible ways.
That's fantastic. And I really love the fact the whole thing just seemed unbelievably interesting. And these were some of our best students that we have on campus. So it was really cool they were able to do that. One more question I had for you before we finish up for the day. You've been working a lot at the Lancaster Center to try to expand some of the student services down there as well. If any of our listeners are from or go to the Lancaster Center, what are some of the things that you've done down there to try to help those students get the services they need?
Yeah, so I've kind of started just by trying to mirror some of the stuff that we're doing up here. So like this week, for example, I have a chair masseuse that's doing free chair massages in ATEC. He's also been going to Lancaster as well. So just kind of mirroring those programs. The Jennifer Storm program, that's going to go up in a couple of days. It's going to be live streamed at the Lancaster campus. So if students are interested and they can't physically come to Summerdale, they're going to be able to go to Lancaster and watch it in one of the classrooms there. And even for online students, so the Center for Teaching Excellence has been working with me on being able to broadcast that through the Blackboard Collaborate. So even online students that don't live in the area of Summerdale or Lancaster, they're going to be able to watch that online too. And I've been doing some different meet and greets at Lancaster, so trying to get into the classes. I'm going to be hitting up a new class tomorrow and just really trying to kind of create awareness. I do have an office down there in room 115, so for any of you that are listening, come find me. This term, I'm there every Thursday with a couple of modifications because like Thanksgiving and all that jazz, but I'm going to be there once a week, and I have the ability to work with people at the Lancaster College electronically. So I'm able to provide telehealth services kind of through the phone. I don't have the budget for HIPAA compliant web-based software program quite just yet. But yeah, so I have the ability to do that, and I actually have the ability to do that for online students as well. So for any online students that might be listening, if you live in the state of Pennsylvania, I'm able to work with you in a distance counseling format. I have had a couple of online students that live outside of state try to get connected with me, and I'm only licensed in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania doesn't allow you to cross over into other states. So for those students that have reached out, we've worked on getting them set up with insurance coverage and providers in their home communities to access that. So yeah, there's lots of different things that we're trying to do.
Well, that's very interesting that you bring that up, because not only are you here at Somerdale, you're in Lancaster, and then we also have a population that doesn't even live in the state. I mean, I've had students from Alaska to Germany. I mean, it's not even just national, but international. I've dealt with many students who are outside of the country. So you've got a lot going on between what we have going on here and the programming that you've been doing, not to mention, your individual meetings with people. You're also down in Lancaster, and of course, we have an online population as well. So you certainly could use an intern or two.
I think so, yeah.
Well, Tom, I have to thank you very much for coming down today. It was very insightful to learn not only how you got here, the work you've done with the Honors 400 class and the other things that you have going on. It's super insightful, and I would just like you to know that anytime that you've got something that you'd like to come down and chat about, I'd be more than happy to have you down each and every term. So just keep in touch with the Nightly News, and we'll be happy to have you back on the podcast in the near future. That sounds like
a plan. Awesome.
Well, hey, Tom, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Paul.
All right, so for Tom Palmieri, he's the college counselor, and you can find all of his information on the Student Services tab of Blackboard. All of his contact information, you can reach out to him through that avenue. So for Tom Palmieri, the college counselor, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we will be right back with the Knights men's soccer team to talk about their season. So we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Sai Pinthong. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome back to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm sitting in today with three members of the Knights men's soccer team. We are sitting in with Zach Morrill, Dylan Kleintop, and Andrew Day. Gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul Miller.
So what we're going to be talking about today, now obviously, Zach, you had been on with us previously, and certainly Dylan and Andrew have been on the podcast a series of times, but we wanted to have you guys in here at the end of the season and talk a little bit more about the season that was for Knights men's soccer. So I wanted to just start off by, letting everybody know the season has just completed. You went 6-4-1, and you finished 14th in the USCAA Division II rankings. You did not, unfortunately, make the playoffs, as the top 10 teams do make the playoffs, so unfortunately the season is over. That being said, you had a 4-game win streak in the middle of your season, and again, you ended up 6-4-1 with some big-time victories. So let's just start off at the top, and I'll go around and I'll try to ask everybody some of these same questions. But Dylan, I'm going to start with you. Now, this is how many seasons have you played?
3.
So this is your 3rd season. Where does this season rank in terms of some of the other seasons that you've had so far?
This one's actually like the best season we've had, especially with team cohesiveness. My first season here, there was just a bunch of drama within the team. Last year, there was a lot of drama. We didn't all get along. This year, we all got along. We're all really good friends. We all talked a lot. We all had good times on and off the field. Even if we didn't make the tournament, and even though we only had 6 wins, this was probably one of my best seasons here at the school.
Well, I mean, anytime you have a winning season, that should always be looked at as at least a step in the right direction, of course. Zach, what were your impressions on the season?
It's probably one of my favorite seasons, considering everybody, like Dylan said, everybody on the team liked each other and all got along. We faced some adversity, but towards the end of the season, I felt like we got around it and ended on a successful note.
That's good. Andrew, what is your opinion? This is the first season you've played with the Knights soccer team. How was your feeling about how everybody got along and how that helped you have a winning season?
Well, for me, it was really nice to be back on the field. I took a couple of years off once I got out of high school, and to be able to play soccer again was amazing. I feel like the connections between the players on the field and off the field have risen to higher lengths, and we've become more than just teammates. And I feel there's more to be done with each other, and I hope that moving on to winter session, we'll be able to create more opportunities between us and as well as on the field.
Well, and back to you, Dylan. Obviously, this is your last season as a Knights men's soccer player, and several others, Taylor Martin, Kyle Stauffer, and Sean Doan, also played their last games as Central Penn Knights. Are these guys people who you're always going to remember, and you're always going to have kind of a special place because of the time that you spent on the soccer field together?
Oh yeah, definitely. I still have remember all the memories I made for my high school team. So that was a couple years ago, and I'm definitely gonna remember the people I met and the friends I made and the memories that I had with this team. Just going forward, I'll always look back on the memories we made with our trip down to North Carolina, our win against Mont Alto in overtime. Those things will always stick out for me probably for the rest of my life.
So, Zach, if you had to pick one specific game this season that really stuck out to you, which game would that be and why?
I would have to say the Mont Alto win, the overtime win. Pretty much, it was it was my first game back from injury, and I ended up getting hurt in overtime, and the guys just stuck it out, and they just came out with the win. It was incredible.
So your season started off late. So you said you came into the season with an injury?
Yeah, I was injured throughout the summer with knee injury.
And you were able to come back, and then you ended up getting injured again in your first game back?
Yeah, it was kind of a nagging injury. I ended up getting hurt multiple times throughout the season, but I just had to stay with it.
And so what's that like, for those people out there who maybe haven't played sports in a while or maybe, hadn't really ever had the opportunity to play college sports? What's it like to, when you guys only had 11 games total that you played, what's it like to have injuries and know that your team needs you, but that you're just not able to get out there? Well, how did that make you feel?
It's definitely tough. It's just I've never been in this position before, having an injury like this. I've always kind of been banged up a few times, but not to the extent of this. It was just a nagging injury. It really made you look like you can't take this for granted. This could have been my last season. It could have been the last time I played soccer. So I just had to take it what it is and try to find some success.
Well, let's hope that's certainly not the case. You still have another year of eligibility left, right, Zach?
Yes, I do.
So then you will be, I would imagine, one of the team captains for next year?
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, and I know that nothing's set in stone there just yet. Andrew, coming into this being your first season, you said you took some time off from playing soccer. When was the last time previous to this season that you played organized soccer?
I had spent 4 years in high school. I finished with my senior year, and then at the end of my senior year, we did a spring league right before summer, and then that was a let-off into summer where I didn't play at all. And then I practiced a little bit with Lycombe and college soccer teams, and it went well, but I wasn't very good still. I wasn't really in shape at all, and then I started running and got really. I started with about 7 to 9 miles a day.
7 to 9 miles a day.
Yeah, every day.
That's very impressive.
And then I came because I needed to get back in shape, and then I came here about. A year later, then I started playing soccer because they offered me a position, and I really ran with that. And I was doing about 16 miles on the bike. So I'm glad we placed well, but I don't think I gave it my all there.
Well, and that's the thing, though. Because it had been a while from you playing organized soccer, maybe just with a full off-season program, getting back into it, maybe you will feel that next year when the season comes around, you'll be able to give, the effort that you believe that you should. So that being said, so obviously this was a major season for Knights soccer. To have another winning season is obviously something that you guys will all, hopefully remember for a long time. So what were some of the other things that happened this year that you can talk about, Dylan, that are going to make this season a memorable one?
One thing that'll make this season a memorable one is definitely our trip down to North Carolina. We left on Saturday. We were supposed to play against Kristen Dome Saturday, but that game got canceled due to rain. So we drove to Virginia on Saturday, about 6 hours in the car. We got down to the hotel, and it was just fun. Like, we all hung out in the same room. Like, it's not often you get to go to a hotel with your teammates with no parents around. Like, just get to have fun and hang out and bond. And then we drove to Mid-Atlantic the next day, and we won our final game of the season. It was a good sending off for the seniors. And then we drove home, and just the car ride home, like, even though it was so long, 7 hours, like, we all listened to music, we talked about things, like, we bonded as a team, and it brought us closer together.
So you talk about bonding as a team, and again, for those people who may have never had a chance to play college athletics, or maybe it's been a long time, what difference does it make, Dylan, that you and your teammates had this rapport this year that maybe you'd mentioned that maybe hadn't happened in years previous?
It's just important because, like, a bond off the field turns to a bond on the field. If you can have, like, a friendship off the field, then your chemistry is more likely to happen on the field. Last year, there was, like, like, me and Zach got along, but, like, I didn't get along with some of the other players. I'll admit that. So, like, the chemistry was off there. This year, if one of us would make a mistake, like, we just picked each other back up right away. We didn't get on each other's case, or we didn't yell or scream at each other. We didn't get into fights. We tried to help pick each other up. With our first loss of this, when we lost our first game of the season, we all, like, try to have words of encouragement to each other. Just the bond, like, it's neat that, like, you can make a friendship in, like, such a short amount of time.
What's interesting about that point that you just made, Dylan, is obviously you've had me in class, and I talk a lot when I'm in class about things that you can do while you're in college to, you know, build up your resume. So when you get out of here, you're a desirable employee or candidate for employment. One thing that I've always been told that, you know, maybe when I came into college I didn't quite understand is how to highlight the athletics on your resume. And to be honest, I've spoken with many leaders that do hiring at different places that told me that college athletics is one of the most important things that they look for, and that often if somebody did play collegiate sports, that kind of moves them up the ranks a little bit. And the main part of that is the teamwork component, Dylan, because look, I honestly, it doesn't really matter who you are and where you work. You're not always going to get along with every single person that you work with. But the ability for you to come together for the greater good, and the ability for you to maybe, you know, overlook some maybe personal differences you have, I think is very important. So certainly, just some advice I would give to you is to maybe talk about those things. If you're ever in a job interview, and, you know, some of the common questions are, you know, tell us a time you overcame adversity, or tell us a time that, you know, you worked as a team. Bringing up some of these things are going to be very important. Just talking about the bonds that you made in this final season, I really think could go a long way in an interview, because unfortunately a lot of times you go in there and you kind of get standard answers from people who are being interviewed. Use this as an occasion where you can explain how you worked as a team and how you functioned well as a team. So just keep that in mind whenever it comes time for the interview. Now, Zach, as you look back at the season, so we looked at one of the games earlier in the season, the Penn State Mont Alto game. What were some of the other games? Because, again, you ran off a 4-game win streak there in the middle. You did have a couple of tough losses. Williamson Trade had your number in September, and then Penn State Mont Alto and Christendom both were victorious against the Knights. What was it maybe that changed as you look back and reflect on the season, from that 4-game win streak to the tough times that you had later on in the season?
I think, like, following our first loss, I think, like, we just lost, like, our identity a little bit. Kind of like, I don't know how to say it. Like, we just
we weren't able to overcome adversity in that point, and, like, I mean, picking up what he said, like, our numbers decreased a lot throughout the season. After Williamson, we didn't have Kyle Stauffer we had him for like 2 games after, because he had an internship. Then we went on our break, and then we lost some of our conditioning. We lost our cohesiveness.
That's a very interesting point to note as well, Dylan, is because, to be honest with you, our schedule is certainly much different than probably all of these other schools that you're playing. And to go on break, and I know that many of you guys were still stayed up here for break, but to just not have that day in, day out practice where you're really having a chance to work with the other people on the team, you know, I think that might be something to think about. And maybe, you know, the best thing about this is, and of course you never want to take a loss as a negative, but the best thing about this is, you know what, something happened this year that you can kind of go back to, say, you know, next year and say, you know what, the team struggled over the break, maybe we need to go about this differently, or maybe we need to make sure everybody's up here for break so we can make sure we're still having practices every day and still functioning on a cohesive level.
Yeah, the first year that Coach Doug coached here, he gave us the full 2 weeks off, with 1 week wasn't mandatory. You could show up if you wanted to. And actually, I don't know if it worked, but we had more wins after the break than we did this year. This year he gave us a week off, but the second week of break was mandatory practice. And I just feel like I don't like to blame outside things for losses, but I just don't think we ever came back the same after that break. We just took the break off and we didn't take it serious or.
Well, and mentally, just having to come into finals, and then I know I'm on the other side as an instructor, but I get it. Your finals week, there's so much going on, there's so much on the line. You have projects and tests, and then when you get to that break, it's just like deep breath, sigh of relief, and then to get back and to come back to start all over again. I mean, that has to take a mental toll on you to a certain point. So, it's awesome that you can at least look back and see that, because if you just take a loss and you move forward from it without learning from it, then it really is a negative. But if you can take a loss and say, you know what, here's what happened, here's what we did wrong, and here's what we need to change, you can actually turn a negative into a positive in that regard too. Yeah. Let's take a look at the last game of the season, gentlemen, and look at this 4-3 win. So you'd come off a couple of situations where you had games postponed due to weather, you had a couple of losses there, and so it went nearly 3 weeks till you got that victory. How did it feel to end the season on a strong note, Zach, with Mid-Atlantic?
It felt great. Just all the struggles we had over the season, just finishing it off and ending on a good note. Seeing all the seniors get the win, it was just a great feeling.
So, again, we had 4 seniors that was their last game. Dylan, when you look back at this, what's that last game going to mean to you? I know that, as we said, you didn't necessarily make the playoffs, but you still had a 6-4-1 record. You still finished 14th in the division. What is that going to mean to you if that is indeed the last college soccer game you ever play?
Just the fact that we went out on a win just makes me happy. My senior year of high school, we went out on a loss because we lost in district semifinals, and I still, out of the whole season, that's the only game I remember because it was the last game of the season, and it was my last game for high school. And since this was probably my last collegiate game ever, of all the season, I'm probably just going to remember that game and everything that happened in that game particularly, just because, it's the last time I ever played.
So what happened in that game that you were able to have such offensive firepower?
The team we played, they're not the strongest team, but they have gotten better over the last couple of years. Last year we defeated them 13-0. This year they recruited some players. The first half we went up 3-0 by the break. Trevor, the goalkeeper, he was playing in the field. He scored his first goal of the season off a corner kick. And then the second half we kind of got lackadaisical. We switched off a little bit. We still were in control of the game. They weren't pressuring us or anything. We actually switched our top defender up to striker and our top striker back to defender, this guy over here to my right, and they attacked on 2 goals very quickly. We scored a 4th through him.
So it was at 3-2.
Yeah, and then we scored a 4th through him, and then they scored another. With about 10 minutes left, we were kind of backs against the wall in a game we didn't think we'd be backs against the wall with, and we pulled out the victory.
Well, that's awesome that you were able to end the season on a positive note. And again, still 6-4-1, so nothing to be upset about. Now, Andrew, back to a question to you. Seeing as this was the first time that you'd played in such a long time, how did the team, accept you as one of the new people? Because not only just you, Andrew, but we had Kyle Vargas and Trevor Holderegger, who were the first-year players. So how did the team accept you as a player on the team? I mean, was it something that you were welcomed with open arms and they wanted to help you?
I think there's a little bit variation between both of those. I think there's a lot of previous bonds created from prior seasons, and I feel like that chemistry is really important to the players already. And I feel like entering in as a new player, there's a lot of room for improvement or room for alteration to yourself to actually fit in with the chemistry already created here. and already established. A lot of our new players like Kyle Vargas and Trevor really have that potential to just slide in and fill in the position.
That's awesome. Well, I did want to just point out one more time that you guys are going to be continuing to work out, right? I mean, the season's just not over. You're not just going to stop. And it said in an article that I read that you are going to be doing indoor soccer in the off-season at the Yellow Breeches Sports Complex. Can you just talk a little bit about what some of that off-season might be?
The off-season pretty much contains of like six to 7 games. We just play. We just try to get everybody together, working. It's not too serious. We still go out there to work hard, win, stay in shape, just have like some soccer back in our lives rather than training and stuff like that.
Now, is this going to be in the spring? Or are you taking some time off, or are you just going right into it?
We're probably going to go right into it in the start of January is when it starts kicking in, and we'll play up until probably start kick-arounds in the spring when we can get outside, and then follow that through the beginning of the season.
Well, I mean, I would certainly love if you guys would let me know when that's going on. That might be something that we can broadcast as well, especially from an indoor place where we don't have to worry about the elements going on. So that would be something really cool. One final question here, and I'm going to turn it over to Dylan. Dylan, because you'd mentioned that this potentially is going to be the end of the road for you, are you going to be involved in the off-season program?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay. I already told Zach I'm playing in the indoor.
Well, so then this isn't. I mean, of course, I understand this is the end of like the official games. Are these just going to be scrimmages then?
No, there's like it's like a little kind of like a round-robin tournament thing, and they take the top 4 teams like in your bracket to the playoffs, and then you play single elimination, and it's kind of just for pride, really, but it's still fun.
Well, Dylan, even though you are going to be a part of the off-season program, what is playing soccer at the college level going to mean to you in your life going forward?
I mean, it's going to mean a lot to me because when I graduated high school and came here, I didn't think I would actually play soccer. And just the friends I've made and the experiences I've had, like it's something like you can never forget for like the rest of your life. Like it's an awesome experience, and if anyone is on the fence about playing collegiate sports, I definitely recommend it.
Well, it's definitely something that keeps you busy, but it also, when you think about how you can put it on your resume and quantify what you've done, I really think that that's something that is going to be very valuable in the future.
Yeah, I've also learned a lot about life in general too, especially from Coach Doug, because he's a business guy and I'm a business major, so I always ask him questions about like business stuff, and he always answered it, and it was just an important experience for me.
Well, no matter what, you always have somebody who you can look to for advice in the future. I mean, certainly myself, don't ever hesitate to reach out to me, but you know, you've made those relationships with Coach Doug, and I think that's somebody who will always be on your side for the rest of your life. So, well, gentlemen, I know that you wished that we could have made the USCAA tournament. Even though you didn't, I just would like to share with you all how proud not only the Nightly News is, but the entire college. You fought through injuries, you fought through just trying to get new people on board so you could field the team earlier in the season. We didn't have a chance to come out and live stream any of those games just yet, but I'm hoping that we could certainly come out and maybe live stream some of these the off-season games. That would be something I think would be really, really cool. So I just want you to know how proud we are as an institution of you guys and the hard work that you've put in. But you still got to walk away from the season happy. You know, you 6-4-1. You continue to get better each and every year, and just know that, you know, even though you're going to lose some people, you've got Zach coming back as the potential captain. You've got some holdovers here. Andrew will be back next year, and you've got Kyle and Trevor coming back as well. So I think that you've at least got a good foundation to start with. Zach, what do you think?
Oh, I think next season has a lot of potential. I'm very excited for it.
That's awesome. And Andrew, thank you very much for taking the time. I know it had been a little bit since you'd played, but from everything I hear, you were one of the all-stars on the team this year. So thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome.
And Dylan, even though, again, that, well, not your last match ever, certainly your last regular season match, I'm glad you guys got to go out with a victory. I'm glad you guys got to go out with a winning season, and you certainly should be proud of everything that you've done this year, because from what everyone's been saying, you're the backbone of the team. So I'm sure you're definitely going to be missed, not only by the soccer team, but by the faculty and staff here at the college. So, Dylan, thank you so much, and best of luck in the the off-season program.
Thank you.
All right, well, that'll bring us to the end of this edition of the Nightly News Podcast. I do want to take the time to thank Zach Morrill, Andrew Day, and Dylan Kleintop, Nightly News Media Club members and soccer players on a successful season. So I want to thank you guys for busting your butts this year and bringing a winning season home for the Knights.
Thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's going to end the show for today. So for Andrew Day, for Zach Morrill, and for Dylan Kleintop, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you the next time on the Nightly News Podcast.